sorry. I work as a subject liaison at the University for Engineering, Math, and Physics, but I also work heavily with promoting open educational resources and open pedagogy and that kind of stuff on our campus. I've been working here for 9 years, and I've been a librarian since 2007. So today I'm going to talk about OER support as a menu of services. And these are things that not necessarily that I don't do all of these things, but I was trying to think of things that we can do as people at various institutions to help our local communities with OERs. And it may not be something that we don't have the ability to do everything. So these are sort of more granular things that we can do to move the needle forward just a little bit. So our learning objectives today are discovering different services that you can offer to support OERs for your community. I know some communities might differ among the attendees here. So some people may have bigger or smaller needs for that. And then understand how open education is really more than just affordability. And I'll talk about that first in my next slide. So open education, OERs, open educational resources are free. And so they're free to access and free to use. And this is kind of how I started with this field, was with the Open Education Network, and they did these workshops where they would try to kind of train the trainer. They would go around, and at the university level, they would say the textbooks are very expensive. There's a huge crisis with the student textbook affordability, and it still is an issue. And so one solution that faculty at the universities could do is to lower that cost. They have the choice to do that, even though higher education is often very expensive. One thing that is in our control is to choose the price and expense of the curriculum materials. So that's kind of how a lot of people get into OERs, is that they save students money, or they save people money, and that is true. However, there's a whole raft of benefits that open educational resources have by nature of their licenses. So by nature of being a Creative Commons licensed media, they allow for different things than a full copyrighted content would. So traditionally copyrighted content, all rights reserved stuff, you have to ask for permission if you want to quote anything. You have to ask for permission if you want to exhibit it. There's a lot of things that you have to go to the publisher or the author of it to explicitly ask for permission in your case. With CC licensed materials, they give you that permission up front. So they're saying you have permission to do all of these things. And so one of them is like you can host and share the full content of the media. So let's say it's a video, or if it's a book chapter, or a poster, or an image, or anything like that, they give you permission to not only like share a link to it, but you can also share the full thing. So you can have the full file, the digital file of it, and put it on your server and distribute it that way. So that's there may be reasons why you want to do one or the other, but for some people it's easier to have their own kind of like local library of things, right? And you have local content of the files, so that you can ensure that you don't have any problems for local access. For example, if you're at a school, you can put it in your learning management shell system, like Canvas or Blackboard or something like that. You can put the file in there with no copyright concerns and share it that way. There are reasons why you might want to link to it instead, but I can talk about that later. There are no licensing issues. One of the things about licensing, like let's say that you have a video series that you like, for our example, our library often will license from a vendor like Canopy or Swank or something like that. We will license videos that people can watch in their class. But if it's a Creative Commons video, then you don't have to, not only don't you have to pay for that, you don't have to license it either. So let's say that there's a something that is licensed and that has its place, but the publisher decides to take it out of Canopy or whatever, or it goes away from the streaming service that you're relying on. You don't have that problem with this. So there's a lot of good things about using a Creative Commons licensed media like that. And another thing you can do is edit and reuse the content to suit your purposes. So let's say that you want to take a piece of a video because it's relevant to the course or to the project you're working on, but you only want that piece. You can cut it out and disseminate it in a different way. It allows you that permissions, so you can have it kind of built to suit for that reason. So for whatever your educational purpose is, you can show only the parts you want, or you can put the parts you want with additional context. You can remix those things together, and you don't have to ask for permission to do it or wonder if you're running afoul of any copyright things. I put a link in here. It says allow for open pedagogy. Open pedagogy, this is a link to an open ed group that has a bunch of examples that you can look at. And the slides are available for you in the Sched platform. So you can use the links there if you want. Open pedagogy is it's a type of pedagogy where the students are becoming creators themselves as part of the course work. So there's lots of different examples in there, but the idea is that you can get your students to engage more with the content and engage more with lots of kind of ancillary writing, communication, and other soft skills as they become creators, meant for distributing it as an open product. So for example, this is kind of a high-end example. Students could contribute to chapters that would constitute like a guidebook or a source book or a textbook or something like that, that then could be used by other students in classes similar to that, right? So you could, as an instructor, they can give them, guidance, instead of having what we call a disposable assignment. This is called a renewable assignment, where the students are writing down, and making a project, but they're intending to share it with a different audience, a global audience. It could be a smaller audience too. For example, at my university, I had a graduate class who the graduate students created like a website kind of resource for mental health, like a mental health kind of guidebook for graduate students. So resources for them, like contextual stuff about how, like what graduate students go through mental health wise, and, some testimonials and where to go and that kind of stuff. And they released it openly so that other universities could use that and maybe make their own guidebooks branded for their own universities. That's kind of what open pedagogy does. And so the idea is using OERs as more than just being affordable things. It allows students and or anybody who's using this to further and deeper engage with the material and kind of giving back into this cycle of content creation kind of thing. So OERs in your community. So I kind of glossed over, but open educational resources are media that have an open license. An open license is a Creative Commons license. As defined, they have 6 different licenses that are used to give different levels of permissions. And there's also another one that's basically what they call CC0, which is public domain. So that's not really like the public domain is something that's existed for a long time, but it just means that there's no copyright on it at all. However, the CC licenses are fully copyrighted material, but on top of the copyright, all rights reserved, you've given the CC license, which is upfront permissions for allowing people to do certain things with the material. And those are irrevocable licenses. So once you put it on the material, it's open forever. At least that iteration of it is. Usually mainly used by schools, so it could be K through 12, community college, universities, but also I've seen it used by community groups, people who want to, create a group in a community and they want to share their resources and not be constrained by, copyright issues. Like, let's say that you're a community garden and you have a lot of resources that you want to share with people. You can create a website, and put those on there, but that's by default, it's going to be all rights reserved. But if they use it as a CC license, then community gardens across the country, across the county, across the state, they can take those resources and remix them and reuse them and, make different versions of resources to share with their local groups, and they can customize them and that kind of stuff. So like I said, those open licenses allow for sharing, posting, reusing, all that kind of stuff. And I think they're a great way, even if you're not at a school, whatever group that you're interacting with as a librarian, if people are using resources and wanting to create, especially if they're creating anything, this is a good thing to kind of advocate for, because these CC licenses allow for a lot of engagement, because more people are going to be able to look at and then use your information, and you'll just make more connections. So it's a great thing for whatever group they're doing, unless they want to make a profit off of the material that they're creating, which is, it's a good thing to do. It's fine, but there's a lot of benefits for this. So so a lot of people, especially at schools, they want to create and share information, but they may not know exactly how or what to do. So that's kind of the rest of this talk I'm going to talk about, is like ways in which we as librarians can advocate for and help people get to the benefits of OERs. So I want to focus on, like, not everybody has the same resources and skills and situations and circumstances to do a lot of the same things, right? It wouldn't make sense for all of us to do that. Like, even in my school, we don't have a full-time person to do this. I mean, I'm helping to do this. I talk with my other colleagues, and we all do this in some level or form, where we talk to people at the university about OERs, but there's no person here that's just, this is their full-time job. And you know, some schools may have more than one person, some may have half a person, or somebody who just does it because they want to, you know. So based on what you can do and what your interests are. So the first thing is we need to do is find out what our community needs. So if you're at a school, like focus on the teachers who creating the curriculum, talk to the students who are consuming that curriculum, find out what their issues are and what their needs are, with faculty who are teaching. There is a big burden on them to kind of address a lot of various pedagogical and curriculum related issues, and they get it from a lot of different places, from administrators and from their department chairs and from the students themselves. So it is important to come at the community, you know, sensitively, and genuinely say, like, I'm a service and here's what I can do for you to help, you know, help you understand the benefits of OER, but also remove any barriers you think that would, you know, be in your way from adopting them. You know, for example, if somebody said, I really like what you've told me about the benefits of OERs, but I just don't have the time to edit the things the way I want them to be, right? You know, like, so that's one of the benefits of OERs is you can remix and combine things together, and they're just like, I don't have the time to put that together. And that's something that maybe if that suits your strengths and suits your abilities, then you could offer that as a service. So based on your interests and based on your skills, you can determine kind of what types of services you might like to offer or develop. So for example, like for me, I don't have a lot of good skills in media editing, you know, like whether, I'll talk about that in another slide, but you know, whether using a lot of different programs to edit things, but I would like to develop those skills so that I could help people with that. And so that's something maybe I could take some tutorials on and get some practice with, and then I'd feel comfortable saying, here's a service that I could offer. Or perhaps I mean, there is somebody actually at my school that has those skills. And so I could work with them to say, could you, you know, I could coordinate this, but could you help people with that kind of service? So whether it's like building a web presence of like building websites for people, teaching about how to do things, or being an advocate, that kind of a thing. Do they have outreach connections? We have people at our school who outreach with the local community a lot. So those people are great to work with to provide those kind of connections. Or maybe you have people who are on the IT side and they work with software all the time, or licensed software that could help with this kind of stuff. So finding out what your community needs and finding out what resources and opportunities you have or that you can develop is a good thing. All right. The next thing is develop a menu. So I'm going to go through this. These are the next few slides, but these are the kind of basic, kind of granular things I could think of how to support OER in various ways. So first thing is discovery, which is like searching, helping somebody find something. The next thing is a repository. Is like maybe you can host a bunch of resources for someone. We have lots of library. I mean, we have library catalogs, but maybe there's we can, you know, within our catalog, or if we have a repository system, we can host those things for them. We have cataloging expertise. You know, we're a stable environment maybe for archiving, so to speak. editing documents, LMS learning management system, how to integrate that kind of materials into the school's LMSs. Ancillaries are the things that aren't traditional like media, like a textbook, but they're things that go along with that in a class, like tests or quizzes or homework problems. Education and awareness is about making people aware of like the benefits of OERs, kind of like what I talked about at the beginning, but saying like this saves people money, it has all of these benefits that these permissions give you. And then the last one is finding a community and making solidarity with other people. So, and I'll talk about all of these in a little bit more depth here. So find any one of these or find a combination of them, and then offer that in some way to your community. So discovery is basically traditional reference skills for searching for sources. It's just that you are learning the landscape of who the publishers are or where to find this kind of stuff. There's some listservs that are active, that people ask questions a lot about, like, does anyone know of any kind of OER on this topic? A lot of the publishers are basically universities a lot of times, but they don't have to be. They could be any kind of organization, but a lot of them are put into these sort of repositories, or some people call referatories. For example, the Open Education Network has an open textbook library, which isn't really a repository. They call it a referatory because they are linking to the publisher. So it's more of like a catalog, essentially. And then the listservs, I didn't put a link to them here, but I'll put it in the chat later on. But the listservs are the SPARC, SPARC. They have an open ed listserv, and then there's the LibOER listserv as well. I hope I'm not getting those two conflated like they're the same thing. Maybe they aren't. We'll figure that out. Let's see. Find some good LibGuides that can give you places to start if you're not really sure about this. I gave you some examples of ones that I thought had a lot of good content in them. I particularly for my OER LibGuide don't have as much information as these places do, because different people have different kind of opinions about it, but it's hard to know like what your community is going to actually search for, right? Like I do a lot of searching on behalf of people. I don't think they're going to go look at 30 different links on their own, to search for stuff. But I thought these LibGuides had a lot of good places where you as a librarian could use your own kind of vetting skills and say, which one of these could I put on my resource guide? Because there's a lot of links there to say that this would be the kind of materials that my community would like to search, and then you get good at searching for things just by doing it, by looking up different topics that people have. Communicate with whoever is wanting the material about what types of materials they need, because it could be that we think like, oh, they need a traditional textbook, but really they just need book chapters, or really they just need some supplemental things that would supplement the thing that they already use. OER Commons, that's one of the links you'll find on there, is a good place, or there's a lot of stuff. One thing I will say with discovery though is it's a good thing for us as librarians to, when we find a title, to go ahead and kind of vet it a little bit. So click on the title, maybe download it and look through it and make sure it's something that is a good quality resource that does have the characteristics that the person is looking for. Sometimes based on titles, I can create huge lists of titles and links to them. And based on the title, I'll think like, oh, this will be a great thing for them based on the keywords, based on the metadata. But when you actually open the material, you'll be like, oh, they're going to say no to this. So it's helpful for the librarian to kind of give that kind of pre-vet process sometimes, especially because they don't have a lot of time to evaluate everything. So we're kind of using our skills to make sure of that. So a repository, not every school has one of these, but if you do, a repository can be a place where you can deposit and disseminate OERs from that place. So the nice thing is they have permalinks in them. You can embed the files. So like in ours, for example, you can take the code and put it into the learning management system, so it's embedded in there easily, rather than having to upload a new file somewhere. Another nice thing about them is they have download or page view statistics or alt metrics, stuff like that. You can get a lot of robust metadata on that, which helps people to discover it within your own discovery system, whatever it is. And you can put a lot of different types of media in there. And one of the nicest things about this is like you can make it your own collection. So you can have like a kind of like a section of a website, basically, that says, here's all of our open educational resources. So I know that repositories can be intimidating and in our case expensive. There's you either license it from some company, or you have to spend a good deal of time paying a developer, or somebody who's got those skills has to spend their time maintaining the software and maintaining all the stuff. But if that is part of your library's operations currently, putting a section for OERs, if you can talk to somebody, or if you have that ability, that would be a good thing, because it does solve a lot of problems for people to know that they can have a place where they have the local OERs can be, and they can rely on finding them and using them there. Editing is a really big, and this might be, in my opinion, one of the biggest things you can do to help somebody out. A lot of people who create, they may not know how to use a lot of editing software, or if they do, they just don't have the time to do it. And if you are good at that, then that could be a service that would really help people make the decision to use this in their class. Or let's say that it is a community group, maybe editing gets them to start doing it, and then you can do training sessions on so they can do that themselves. But using PDF editors, using iMovie or other video editing software, or like God forbid the Adobe Suite or something like that, whatever is helpful to them to get the thing that they wanted to create done. So like they could give you a Google Doc or some kind of document with all the things they want in it, but you can make it look, design skills, or just helping them put a table somewhere, getting it set right. Those are really big things for people, because they want the user experience. They want the consumer of the information to have a good experience. But these are kind of like publishing services that are valuable. So if that's something that you have the interest in or the capacity for, this would be a really helpful thing. Especially if people are remixing stuff or creating something collaboratively, like the publishing software. There are free ones out there, but there's also ones that you can. There's like freemium type things where do you have your own server, that kind of stuff. So getting into that, like if this is something you're interested in, that like understanding the landscape of the different software and the different responsibilities of how to do that kind of stuff. This really is a barrier for a lot of people, and this would help, removing that kind of hurdle for them would get more people to use OERs, I feel. The next one is learning management system integration. So if, for example, your school has something like that, like my school uses Canvas, some people use Blackboard or Moodle, or there's others. If you know how to use that system pretty well, and understanding how to like insert things and use modules, creating those things with the OERs, like basically you're just taking something that does exist as an OER and you're putting it in here, but you're putting it in here in a way that is easily used and it's easily be used by the faculty member or the teacher. You know, putting in quizzes or those ancillary things, structuring the materials. So like if there's a whole bunch of modules based off of, you know, like that, like you find an OER that has a bunch of modules, how do you set them up into the learning management system? There are common cartridges for lots of things like the OpenStax textbooks. So maybe if a teacher or instructor doesn't know how to install one of those, but you know, and they make them for the different LMSs so that it is an easier process, but maybe they've just never done that. You can show them how to do that once and they can do it again. So again, this is like kind of the editing thing. This doesn't have to be like a super hard skill that you have, but it just requires a little bit of experience and trying and testing this out, maybe having your own like practice course shell where you can practice doing this thing and then talk to various instructors on like the things that they want. You can practice those and then help them with that. This is another thing that would be tremendously helpful for people, again, because like I said, that they have a lot on their plate and deciding to use an OER isn't that hard for some people, but it's the implementation of it that's the difficult thing. Let's see. Ancillaries are, like I put in there, homework, test quizzes, videos, slide decks, especially PowerPoints. A lot of instructors like to have these so that they don't have to create their own right at the beginning of using a new textbook. So adopting a new book or adopting a new resource, if it's a lot of work over years to create all of the planning and different pieces of the class. And if they come with some of those things already, that's really another barrier that helps them choose that thing. So these are like at my university, these are the types of things that would be alternatives to like the full service access code sites. So there's access codes like through Pearson or Cengage or McGraw-Hill, where they charge students, you know, like $150 for just a code to get into the website that allows them to do their homework and take their tests and quizzes and stuff. And so one of the things is like some like textbooks, like the OpenStax books, there's others that do this too. They come already with those types of ancillaries materials. They know that that's what faculty and instructors need, so they'll come with that. But some of them don't. And if they don't have those, one of the things we can do is help them discover, help find and root out where there could be acceptable like little groups of homework problems or, you know, crowdsourced things like this that are openly licensed that we can put into their thing. Or understanding like what types of programs that can help with auto grading. So for example, in Canvas, I know that there's a way for Canvas to install a quiz in there or create a quiz in there, and it can auto grade that. If you have that kind of skill or knowledge of how to set that up for a faculty member or instructor, that's a huge thing for them. Depends on what type of course they're in, of course, but what type of content they're using. And also maybe developing like a community of learners or instructors that is local to you or within the state or whoever that could have community-driven creation. So, I mean, we've been talking about this for years, but to have a, common, like, let's say, math homework or quiz things on different levels of math on different concepts, chapter type things, to have different levels of that where it's like crowdsourced, community driven, where people are creating those questions as a huge question bank that people can draw from and then put into their however they deploy their quizzes. There's lots of different software places that do that, and making them randomized and change variables and things like that. But if that's part of your skill or something that you can facilitate, that would be a huge help to people as well. And I'm not, in math is like the easy concept. Lots of people use different types of quizzes, so it's not just like numbers and stuff, but this is one thing that some faculty want to create their own, but some really need the help of like having these to pick from when they choose some open material. And this is another great thing about having Creative Commons licensed material, is that you can insert and mix and match and customize and make the things the way you want them to. All right, so education and awareness, this kind of goes sort of conceptually at the beginning, but this is sort of like teaching people about OERs and about the promise and possibility of them. So it's more of like instruction and community outreach. And this is kind of a lot of what I do actually as a service to this campus. And it's the who, what, I forgot to put when, but where, why, how of OERs, of like, the kind of where they came from and how they work, and what their role in it, what their role in it is. So we talk about what are the problems, what are the different solutions, how we can make a path to accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish. There is a link in my slides to this Open Education Network guidebook. The link goes to a website that hosts the PDF. So this is a PDF of it. So when you click on that link, it'll just download automatically a PDF of this big guidebook. And I like this guidebook because it kind of gives you a very big overview of like what I've talked about, the who, what, where, why, and how of OERs, and of that kind of a lot of resources. So it's a good place to begin if you haven't seen it yet. So then you can create a plan and customize like a resource site, like a website, a LibGuide, whatever you want to do for your local community so they can understand how to engage with OERs, what your kind of level of service commitment to them is, and why they would want to use them, and how they can come to you and get help to do that and accomplish that. Sorry. The last one I have is community and solidarity. And this is kind of more for us, the practitioners, the librarians who, but also the champions of people who want to get the word out and want to be a solution, a good example of how OERs can can help with the dissemination of good information and good resources. You can create a group and slowly have them added over time. Maybe have a regular meeting. Let's say like there's a meeting on your school's campus, or if you're in a public library, at your library, or at a community place. Maybe you create a listserv, like a Google group or some other place to do that, so that people can, or like a, like a newsletter, a Substack, or whatever, that people can join and kind of get updates for. Maybe sending out a newsletter to those people if that's something you're interested in, but keeping them engaged with certain types of programming, making sure that they are up to date on new resources that come through whatever the services you're providing. So let's say that one of the services you're committed to and you're interested in is like editing and helping that kind of design and things like that. You could talk about, here are the trainings for this, or here's a new open source software that helps you out with this, or here's I've seen OERs on this, like OERs on creating OERs, right? So like letting them know about the resources that, in addition to you as a person, they could explore their own as well. Community and solidarity obviously needs leadership, but just make sure it's flexible and inclusive, and make sure that like we're all in it here to, for the same reasons we're librarians, which is to help people get connected to the material and get engaged with the material that they need for their purposes. And just the beautiful part of OERs is that they have a lot of possibilities with them, and we're here to help people enjoy those possibilities. All right, so I've come to the end of my little talk here, and I would love to answer any of your questions or hear any ideas or maybe successes you've already had. I know people who've come to here probably have some experience with this, or any challenges you've encountered. I'd be happy to engage with any of that. My contact information is here, my email address, and feel free to email me anytime. I'd love to share things or help answer anything.
Jeff, sorry, Jeff, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Folks, please feel free to share your questions in the chat. Dana is asking, what was the subject that was difficult for you to find as an OER?
That's a great question, Dana. So, for example, engineering resources for me as an engineering librarian are very few and far between. It's been difficult to get. There are better. I mean, the people do publish them every year. There's new people publishing those things, and the thing is, like, they're in the case of the college level instruction, the professors are writing these textbooks, and instead of publishing with McGraw-Hill, they'll publish with their local university's library, like ours does, or other people. And they'll, like, for example, NC State has published a recent series on electrical engineering by one of their professors. So every year that goes by, there's more and more material that is generated as an OER. But like initially, engineering was difficult. Like I'm trying to think what else. A lot of people have kind of niche, at least in my school, classes where they'll say, like, I teach a class on, and I don't mean to say niche in a pejorative way, but like it's they'll teach a class on, trying to think of a good example, but like social work in in mental health or something, where among a certain population, let's say, I'm kind of making that up, but the idea is that it's like an upper level course where it's only one class taught here, and it maybe not that it's not that it's an uncommon course, but it's like the kind of focus of the course is not what you'd find at a lot of schools, and therefore there's just not going to be a book really relevant to that. In fact, the instructor isn't going to find a textbook for that class. They're going to have to find a couple readings, different readings that they can cobble together, which actually is a good example of why an OER would be good for that, and why we need more OERs so that people can make those mashups for those types of kind of customized subjects. But then and to be honest, this is a good question, Dana, too, because even though I love OERs and I think that they're really great for everybody, if they don't exist, then they can't help anybody, right? So in a lot of cases, somebody will say, I love the idea, and then I'll search for something and just say, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't find anything. And that happens a lot. And so the conversation then can turn to, well, is there a way that you could possibly help create an OER on this topic? You know, maybe they have the capacity, or maybe they can work with other people to create one. Now that we've identified a gap, you know, and of course, like those stars kind of rarely align for that, but you know, those are things to think about. Any other questions or ideas?
Anyone else want to share their experience with OER?
One thing also I would love to know is like how many people here are, you know, are doing any kind of work with OER or interested in it. Like that community solidarity slide is, you know, there doesn't have to be one big group in the state or anything like that, but anybody interested in kind of getting together with other people to kind of support each other. That's something I've from this group here. Okay, great. Thanks, Dana. SPCC uses it, and you help find resources for faculty. That's awesome.
Okay, this might be a good opportunity to kind of share your perspective. So Olivia shares that she's definitely interested, but not sure where to start. And Travis is saying, I'm in the same boat as Olivia.
So I think that it just depends on what if you're at a school or if you're at a public library, what the types of things that the community you serve are using and looking for on a regular basis to do, like, you know, education or engagement with some group. So understanding the types of materials that they use now, but talking to them about the benefits. So understanding the benefits of OER. So maybe looking at that guidebook, or, you know, looking at some kind of module about like examples. So, you know, for that open pedagogy link I had, there's examples of like how OERs can really support engagement with education. So maybe just getting started with the kind of examples of here's a good example of something that you know, some content community, like, so like let's say if it's physics instructors and they really like this certain open physics book or an open calculus book, or, and I'm using these examples because those are the subjects I deal with, but it could be like a good open there's an open language institute at the University of Kansas. They have an open languages center, And so they have a lot of examples of not only just textbooks, but dialogue videos and other kind of multimedia resources for language learning, and for the like teaching language pedagogy there, and it's open. And so like just kind of, if you're not really sure about like how to engage the people in your community, maybe take some people, before you go to them, go and find examples that you feel like you can kind of look around a little bit and understand like the benefits of this Creative Commons licenses, and say, here's a good example of something that is open, and here's different ways in which you could use that, maybe, and just kind of present it to those people. That might be a way to start, and just kind of thinking about the advocacy. So Olivia says, so if I'm looking for OERs relating to help with film studies resources, then go in search of specific examples of that being used in various places. Yeah, I think so. Like you can find good film studies. I mean, there's probably not like a ton, but find what is out there. As far, I know, for example, there, or at least I've referred to, sorry, two good film studies textbooks to our librarian for that, so they could engage with their faculty on those, and find the people who are making OERs related to that. I mean, it could be that there are video series or anything like that that could be used as a supplemental thing. This is one of kind of the ends that I use for people on my campus is I will find some OERs and I will send them out to instructors and say, take a look at this OER. Number one, they're free to use. And so you can use as much or as little as you want as a supplement to the thing that you're already using, right? And it could be that then they say, as they look through this thing, possibly using it as a supplement, they'll say, oh, actually, you know what? This could serve as a replacement for lots of different parts of my course. And then they may ask you some other questions like, how would I implement this? Or do you have any other ancillary things and that kind of thing? Also looking for other things. Yeah, so it depends. I think this is the hard thing is like, regarding subjects, like I keep an eye on the listservs and I kind of just forward newly published things to the different librarians in my school. But you kind of think about this as like time is, like we're all kind of really trying to get as much done as we can, but time is kind of on our side on this because new Creative Commons license stuff is published all the time. There's lots of organizations out there that pay for the publication of it, and every year they get more things going. And it's if you want to just focus on one subject at a time, that's okay, that's good. You can't like find all the things for everybody. I have seen LibGuides though that are they'll have like a whole variety of things for every subject, and you can take some of their resources. For example, there's an engineering librarians organization that's created a whole LibGuide for engineering OERs, and I use that all the time. But we all help each other out in that kind of respect. So. And so just don't think of it as something really daunting, like pick a small thing that you think that you are interested in to explore and kind of, understand, so that then you can tell somebody else about it. And then that's a seed, and then that's going to grow. And then you're just going to keep doing that, planting those seeds. And then eventually, I've been doing OER stuff since 2017, and I still think that I haven't done enough. I mean, legitimately, I have not done enough. So like, there's always more to do. But if you just do a little thing at a time, then it'll flower and provide fruit in no time. So, do you guys have any last questions or ideas?
All right, folks. Well, if we have no other questions, we'll end with a few minutes early. Feel free to reach out to Jeff via email. His slides are also available in SCED on our annual conference webpage.
I want to thank everyone for coming, and I hope that you guys, find something in some way that you can support OER and,